Hey, everybody. Oh my gosh. I have Natalie Webb here from Cafecita. You are going to love her. She's so incredible. So talk about a big pivot. This is somebody who really literally was, you were well, first I want to say what your coffee company is, that you're about focusing on women's empowerment and environmental sustainability in the coffee industry, and that you were a human rights activist lawyer in 70 countries and you lived in 10 of them, and then you went into coffee. This is just so incredible. So I just can't wait to hear from you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, all right. So, all right. You got to tell us the story of you, because this is amazing, that what you did in the world. I kind of want to know, like, how did you get the idea that you were going to be a human rights lawyer? And then what was that like for you? And then why did you shift, all these things? So take your time and tell us really from the start. Birth happens and then Natalie Webb comes on. And tell me, tell about your past a little bit so we get to know you. Are you from LA? You live in LA now.
Yeah, so I am originally from LA, born and raised, and left though when I was 18. I actually really didn't like LA growing up, which is funny that I'm back here, so I'll get to that. But yeah. Left when I was 18. I'm a dual citizen with the UK. So went and worked over there, which was very cool because I worked as a bartender. So as an 18-year-old American.
Yes, exactly. What a cool job to have when you're 18 too, Yes.
Completely. And that actually started just my love of travel. I mean, I grew up, traveling with family, especially going to go back to London to visit my mom's side of the family. But yeah, I just became completely enamored with it. And from there, it kind of took off. So I came back after that first gap year, went to college, did multiple study abroads.
Everybody, I want you to hear that. She said that first gap year, right? Yeah. So, that's any of you that are listening, that we're into the gap year thing, because that's how you figure out who you are and what you want to do. And I took a gap year too. I traveled in my gap year because I had to. I didn't have very much money, so it was very impoverished traveling, but it was okay.
But I mean, I think when you're 18 or in your 20s or whenever, it's a great way to travel, also to do that backpacking, because you really experience the country from a different perspective. And I feel like I connected more with people. I was doing couch surfing, which I don't know if you know that website, but it was like legit sitting on people's couches. So I came back to college, did some study abroads. Actually, one of them was in Singapore, and during that semester I started scuba diving and completely fell in love with it, and then decided when I was done with my undergrad that I wanted to be a dive master. So I spent a year, second gap year, working as a dive master in Honduras.
Under the water. You were underwater breathing.
Yeah, completely, like an instructor's assistant basically.
Yeah.
And then another semester abroad that I did in undergrad was in Ghana. And when I was in Ghana, we were given, for the whole semester, we had to do a research assignment, and we could choose any topic that we wanted. And when I was there, it was just very eye-opening for me to kind of see how the world worked as far as international economics. So I was seeing that Ghana had all these raw materials, but nothing was being like manufactured in the country. So everything was being imported in. And I started looking more and more into it and decided to do the research on gold mining, which it used to be the Gold Coast, right? So it still has this whole history from colonization, and it still has the same infrastructure, which is all about getting the gold as quickly out of the country for as cheaply as possible to other countries that then are actually making all the money off of it. So
typical story in Africa about the resources and other countries, right? Where people come in, especially if it's in not developed economy, then they just come in and take advantage of that. Yes, we'll give you some money and maybe we'll build some roads for you. Maybe we'll put in some water. But then what happens, we know, is the story.
Absolutely. And so I realized all of the companies that were doing gold mining were all foreign corporations, and they were just completely breaking all of the laws, the labor laws, the environmental laws. I mean, it was terrible. And it was kind of left to the nonprofits to hold these corporations accountable, which was very difficult, right? So the way that it was most effective is if those nonprofits teamed up with nonprofits in the US or Canada or where the corporations were actually based to try to hold them accountable in their home country. So all of this to say is this is why I went to law school. This was like an amazing semester for me. And I just decided I want to do human rights law and corporate accountability. And then
I love that. I love that corporate accountability. We're always going for that, right? We always want to hold the corporation.
Too. Yeah. Because when I got into it, it was called corporate accountability. Now they call it corporate social responsibility, and it's been a little bit softer than it had been. And unfortunately, when I was in law school, actually the laws that were being used to hold corporations accountable, the Supreme Court didn't completely shut it down, but like really
pretty much did. Yeah.
So all like the kind of piecemeal stories, but basically I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I still took another gap year to work as a dive master, and then I moved to New York and went to law school there.
Wow. Then did you go to NYU there? Where'd you go?
CUNY.
CUNY
University, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is like, I went to Santa Cruz for my undergrad, and then
that's a good segue.
Yeah. So
yes, it is. Whoa, I so know it because I went to Evergreen. So you can imagine, right? So like it's almost like going to Santa Cruz.
Absolutely. So I felt very lucky to be around law students who all wanted to become, public defenders, and were like all about kind of using the law for the good and for the people. So I came out of law school right during the foreclosure crisis. And so my first job was actually then doing foreclosure prevention. That then turned into eviction prevention. And then I was doing gender-based violence work. And then I was doing immigration policy. And then I was doing post-conviction relief work. So it was a lot of amazing work that I was doing, and I really liked it. But it was, I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. So I really spent years kind of thinking about what that would be, because my background was always working at nonprofits. My go-to thought was going to be, okay, I'm going to start a nonprofit. Like, this is what I want to do. But I also had seen that so much of the nonprofit world is really focused on grant writing, grant reporting. They need the funding. And so whatever the funders want, that's the work that they're going to do. They're very reliant on it.
Yeah.
So
which doesn't really give you the place to land your heart in a spot. It means that you're always focused on what are they going to fund. And,
absolutely.
And that really, I think for any entrepreneur, this is the tricky part, because when you do pitch for funding, whether you have a product or a service, you want to make sure that you are holding true to your vision of what it is. And it's hard to do. It really is.
Right, completely. So especially also basically trying to figure out the business model that was the most efficient, that I was comfortable with, coming from this kind of anti-capitalist ideology, but also seeing the downfall of nonprofits. And so when I was in my last lawyer position doing the post-conviction relief work, it was actually remote work, even though it was before the pandemic. So it's before it was like as popular as
all right. You were ahead of the curve on that one. Yeah. Well, 70 countries and lived in 10, I'm thinking, you skipped over I went from this country to this country to this country.
I mean, I can if you
want. You and the plane, and then, like that. Okay. You couldn't do that now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So while I was doing that job, I was living in Oaxaca, Mexico, which is one of my favorite places in the world. I just loved it so much. And while I was there, I was volunteering at a few organizations, but one of them was this one called Envia, and they do responsible tourism. So they'll take people out to the villages surrounding Oaxaca to visit these women artisans who are making amazing, like they're weavers and potters and just doing incredibly cool art. And the money that they make from the tours, they then use as no interest loans to those artisans to get their businesses up and running and being self-sustaining and being empowered. And it's been incredibly successful. And it just was so inspiring to me because it was a self-sustaining nonprofit. They weren't reliant on grants. They didn't have to do any of that. They don't have to.
Yeah, it was all coming from the work that was being done and made.
Yeah.
And,
so every part of it was great. And so that's why I decided, okay, I want to do a social enterprise that's like this. And then I had to decide, okay, what was the business side going to be to sustain the nonprofit side? And I've just always loved coffee. It's something, I mean, especially as a lawyer, as a student, like it's just been such a big part of my life. And then when I was living abroad and working remote, I was always working from cafes. And so seeing just that cafe culture, the similarities around the world, the differences, like the community aspect of all of them, I just loved it so much. And so the original plan was I was like, okay, I'm going to open a cafe and the cafe will be able to do all these programs. And so this was actually
like 2019, wasn't it, that you were planning all this, right?
Well, so I started thinking about it around then, but I actually decided, okay, I'm going to do this, like really kind of about it in 2020. So I was
oh yay great time to launch a new venture. Definitely.
Exactly. So I was in Morocco at the time, working from there, and I was like taking photos of cafes and I was like, this is so awesome, I'm so excited, I'm so inspired. And then was incredibly lucky with timing that I actually left Morocco the week that like they shut their borders down. And so I left right before that happened without knowing, just kind of looking in retrospect how lucky it was. And then I was flying back when the ban on the European travel was announced. I like landed and was like, oh, this happened while I was in the air. And then LA completely shut down. So not the best time to open a cafe. And so pivoted to a coffee company. And so now we do half e-commerce and half wholesale to other cafes. And hopefully the goal is to one day still have a cafe. But for now, it's been really great actually doing the e-commerce and working with other cafe owners because there's still that community aspect in that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Wow. So that's crazy. But now talk about what really the coffee that you, what your whole business model is based on, because this, I mean, that's an incredible journey to get to there. But the thing that I love about it is you're doing something really different around the coffee. You aren't just going and grabbing coffee from countries and getting it at the price, right? You're doing something else with it. So say more about that.
Absolutely. So the coffee company and the business model that Cafecita is that all of our beans are single origin, organic, and fair trade certified, and they all come from sustainable women-owned coffee farms and co-ops. And then a percentage of every sale goes to supporting women's nonprofits around the world, starting with Envia, the organization I volunteered with in Oaxaca that I was so inspired by. So they get a percentage of every sale. So it's been amazing. And I should also backtrack to say that when I started researching cafes and the coffee industry, I just saw how male dominated it is and how the farms, they'll have up to 70% of the manual labor is women, but they're far less represented as the farm owners or any type of management position. So, and then even when they do own the farms, the price that they're getting for their coffee is way lower and they're not having like the same support or the resources. And so it's been interesting because it's all this new research. I mean, new like in the past 10, 15 years, I would say.
Yes.
But because so many of the coffee companies in the US are also owned by men, it's this corner of the coffee industry that people are interested in, but like it hasn't really been tapped into. And so I was like, that's what Cafecita is going to do. Like, that's exactly it. And so we really want like from the beans all the way to the cup and beyond to really be supporting like women's empowerment.
Oh, that is so incredible. Well, no surprise that the coffee plantations, right, and who's running them and who's profiting from them are men. I mean, these are predominantly countries where it is still many places a male-dominated industry and culture, right? So how did you go about finding those plantations, the coffee farms? Because that is like crazy.
Yeah, so luckily I was introduced to our importer, which is Sustainable Harvest, and they're based in Portland, but their whole model is relationships. They have relationships with these farms for decades, and they really their mission is very aligned with Cafecita. So because also it was launched in 2020, I was really reliant on Sustainable Harvest to have those relationships already established. And so through them, I'm able to connect with the farms, and so excited because from the time I launched it, I have been like, I cannot wait to actually go to the farms and like meet with the women and start that very personal connection. But it hasn't been safe, and I haven't wanted to go until I feel very sure about everything.
That's right. That's right. Or because you might get trapped there. Not so much that you wouldn't be worried about getting COVID there, which is one concern, but I think it's more that you couldn't get back into the US.
Oh,
they shut down
or bring COVID. That was my biggest concern, is like going into these villages and like being like bringing it unknowingly. So it was just something I wanted to make sure everybody was vaccinated and boosted and we're good. So now we have a trip hopefully coming up soon, which I'm very, very excited about. And that will be to our producers in Chiapas.
Well, and where are they? What part of the world? Is it Central America, South America? Tell us where some of those sustainable farms are, so we get a sense of where those beans are coming from, because we know that they're dried in different ways in different countries. And so, but that part of the world, I think where you're getting it is the best way to treat the coffee, right?
Right. So right now we're working with producers in Peru, Colombia, and Mexico. But we've in the past have worked with producers in Rwanda, Guatemala, and Honduras as well. So it's as the harvests come in that we just which coffees we take on, which has been really cool, because it also means we got to try out different coffees from everywhere and kind of figure out what the ones that we like. So the majority are Latin America, Central and South, but I really love the East African coffees. So I'm always trying to pull those in. And we potentially are going to get some from Indonesia soon as well, which I'm very excited about.
Fantastic. Now, then are you doing just green bean, or are you doing roasting? What are you selling and doing with it? Once you get the beans, I want to know. I want to know, like, can I get some green, put it in my own roaster? Can I get some already roasted?
Right. Yeah. So we buy the green and then we roast to order. So it's very, very like, the quality is something I've been very non-compromising about. And so that's why it's, single origin, organic, fair trade. I mean, like everything, the coffee is, it's amazing. Just, if you're into coffee, like it has to be the best. So we roast to order. So everything's very fresh when we ship it out. And we roast here in LA, and then the e-commerce people buy through our website, and that we can ship that all over the US. And then the cafes that we're working with right now are also in Los Angeles right now. But then we're also on quite a few digital marketplace platforms, which has been really great. So that's also like throughout the US. And then we're also do a lot of corporate gifting. So if companies want to buy a lot of bags as gifts for their employees or for marketing to their clients, all of that, we've tapped into that, which has been great as well. So.
That's fantastic. Now, so this is a big shift from being a human rights lawyer to being, a business owner, an entrepreneur with a product. So how did you make that shift? I mean, what did you do?
Yeah, that
must have been like a big Peruvian mountain you were going up, right?
Absolutely. And I am still climbing that mountain. It is such a journey, and it's been great though, because I was so excited going into it about having that something myself that I can create, and all the amount of work that I put into it, you see that work, so it's definitely challenging. There's skill sets that I had going into it of being detail oriented or organized, these things that are more like lawyer skills that have been incredibly useful. But then there's also a lot of new skills that I have to to learn and that I'm working on.
Like winning others over, or what's the new skill that you have to learn? Like saying no, or knowing the quality, or what's that?
Yeah, well, definitely coffee, because, you know, going into it, I was like, oh, I love coffee. I know what I like, but let me tell you how nuanced it is. So it's really great working with the roasters, because they have 30 years experience and they're like amazing. So I really, that's something that, yeah, I definitely have a team that's like coffee experts to make sure everything is great. But it's also just, for me, my biggest thing is management. I'm sometimes a little bit too nice, I feel, and I really like the team aspect of things, which is great when you have a good team. But if we've had interns before where it's a little bit challenging because they're not coming through with the work that they said, and then
or underperforming. Yeah. And then how to give them feedback, right?
Exactly. So for example, that's things like that I'm still working on. But it's good. I mean, I'm definitely enjoying the process.
I love that. And I think these are the things you don't realize when you go into business for yourself. Eventually you're going to have help, and it happens usually sooner than later. And then you need to manage the help. And that is like, it's not as precise a skill as being a lawyer, reading a document and making sure that it's clear and etc. It is the same principles, of course, but it's just happens in a completely different way. So that is so amazing. Okay, take a pause just for 1 second, will you? Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons that I thought we should stop is because I wanted to make sure I could ask you some deeper questions about the employee thing, because I was saying, this is, and I didn't say this on the podcast, but when we stopped, I said, this is my Achilles heel too, is giving people feedback. You have to give people feedback often. You can't just assume that they know how. And I don't know about you, but my first admin that worked for me, that was like, she was a star player. So everybody, I compare that bar to her every time. And I'm like, well, that person's not Emer. I mean, like that, because she was so incredible, and her work ethic, and she understood my voice, and, all these things. And so what do you do? How are you doing? What do you do? Like an all hands meeting? What do you do to get your team aligned?
That's exactly it. It's very hard. It was hard for me because I've realized my default is to be so nice, right? And to assume like your first admin, they just get it. Like they're just going to get it. We're going to be on the same page and there's going to be no issues. But of course that doesn't always happen. And so one of the things from living in New York that I really appreciate is when people are direct. Like I do not get offended. I do not take it. I'm not defensive. Like just tell it to me straight. Yeah. But it's funny because it's like, that's how I like people to interact with me.
But being that way, it's a skill, right?
It is. And so it's something I'm still learning, and also just trying to put more structure, with the people that I work with, so that there's boundaries, there's expectations. Because I think once people know that, most people are fine with it, but it's almost putting those boundaries and those expectations on someone. It's a skill, like you're saying. Yeah.
Did you have to practice? Like I always tell people, practice at home in your relationships about how to set boundaries there, because it's easy to set boundaries for me, with my partner. I'm like, do not leave the cupboards. This is what she said to me. Do not leave the cupboards open. You're driving me crazy. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I couldn't say that to one of my employees, but I could say something like, that sandwich, where I say, you're doing such great. I love having you on my team. You're magnificent. And I want to walk you through how this process might work better for me. And then you give me feedback. And actually, my friend Hannah, not too long ago, taught me how to do that better, because she was like, you know what? The feedback thing, you got to figure that out, because you're not so good at it. And I'm like, oh, thank you.
See, that's great feedback.
She gave me like a little tip. I know, she gave me a little tip sheet. So it's on my whiteboard. It's not in this house where I am, but it's on my whiteboard. So I look, when I'm about to give feedback, I look at it. Be kind, be nice, be honest, and be direct, don't mess around. Right.
Well, that's exactly it. And I mean, I think most people, at least the people that I've worked with, like they want to do better. People want to be good workers, so exactly. Just be positive, like focus on the good, and then, you know, work together to set.
Yeah.
the structure
Now,
that works for
you're going to
everyone.
go on a trip to meet some of the growers, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, where are you going? Where are you going to go first?
So we're going to Chiapas. Right now, I'm going with our photographer, who is amazing, by the way. He also just started, and incredibly happy to be working with him. So he's already been in Oaxaca.
You already went through the boundary process with him.
Yes.
This is what I want you to shoot. I do not want you to shoot this. Do not shoot my left side, shoot my right. You know, like that, right?
Well, it's just, you're talking about your first admin. Sometimes people just click. I mean, that is like the ideal, but it doesn't always happen. And with him, I feel very grateful that it does appear to be happening like that, which is nice. And so,
awesome.
Because he was in Oaxaca. He actually, I think just yesterday, is now in Chiapas. So he's already there. And I'm hoping to go down in a couple of weeks as well. So,
all right. So you're going to fly there? Is it close enough to drive? You're flying.
So yeah.
Where is it? Where is it? Is it in Mexico?
The most southern state of Mexico.
Right.
Yeah. So it's almost right next to, it is next to Guatemala. But of course, where the farm is out in the countryside. So flying into the main airport there, staying in San Cristobal, which is this really cool city that I've been wanting to see. And then it's like a 4 or maybe even longer drive to the closest little village. And then from there, it's another 4-hour drive to the farm. So from that point, the farm will pick us up. And then when we're out there, we'll do homestays and really get to know the community, which is the whole thing.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and go on the farm and just meet the women, see how everything works, and then eventually make our way back. So I cannot wait.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. I'm crossing my fingers that everything stays open.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? It's just so open and closed, open and closed. And I think, you know, learning how to be in a state of flux, like April Rinne would say, it's state of flux. Be good about that. But that's what's true when you travel anyway, you know, being a seasoned traveler, you know.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, most of Cafecita starting in 2020, it has been a huge skill for us to always pivot. So like, I really always try to think of, you know, being a palm tree, right?
Exactly.
Like, you got to move
with the wind. It's the wind. Now, did you start to do a brick and mortar? Do you have any brick and mortar presence at all? Did you?
Not yet, because it really, I mean, everything shut down before I could even get started, luckily, right? So I haven't had to have that overhead with the rent or with all the employees and all of that. So in that sense, it has been great to be able to pivot so easily with all the flux that's going on. But this semester, Cafecita also has been very, very fortunate to work with UC Irvine. So their law school did all our trademarks, and now their small business clinic is actually going to be helping us, and they specialize in the brick and mortar. So we will be starting this semester figuring out all the permits and the licensing and all of that fun stuff to have like the lawyers be able to do despite being a lawyer. I'm like,
that's fantastic. Watch out, coffee in LA. We know who we're talking to here. Watch out. We're gonna surpass you in any second. Well, that's fantastic. Now, how do you balance your work life with your personal life? How do you keep all that in balance?
Balance, what is that?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been really difficult, to be honest. It's been so busy. Like the first year was really working on the foundation, and that seemed, you know, that was a little bit kind of slower moving and really reaching out. And now it's the scaling, and it's very inconsistent at the moment, where it'll be like super busy one week and then maybe like slower orders the next week. And so it's been a lot. I mean, even this morning, it's been like completely running around LA, dropping off coffee at cafes, going to the roaster, having to go back to the roaster, like making calls. Like,
well, this is good. All right, because I love to ask people, like, tell me, you know, what's your day? What's the day in the life of your Cafecita like for you? What do you do in the morning to prep yourself, get ready? So when you're thinking about, you know, this is how I prepare so that I can deliver, and then how do I calm down at night? Walk us through like a day of yours, if you would.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like I should also say there's the ideal day that I know I should be doing.
No,
where
I want
start
the
out and
real
I'm
day. I want the
meditating
real day. I want the real day. Give us the real stuff here.
yeah. So on a real day, it's like waking up. Normally, I'm also like a big time cyclist. I'm going to be racing this year. So
Oh, right.
yeah, I'm super
Yes.
excited. Yeah. So waking up, trying to get a ride in the morning, which has been really difficult during winter because it's like 40 degrees even in Los Angeles. I don't know what's
But
going
you
on.
could do Zwift. You could get on your trainer and do Zwift.
I need
That's
to get
what's
a
true.
trainer. That's the whole thing.
All you need is there's cheap trainers. You just need your power meter and then you can go. That's what I do. I don't have one of those fancy ones that shifts for you and makes it harder. I just make it harder, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's true. But yeah, so
Try to get a ride in. All
try
right.
to get a ride in. Then like, you know, I try to have like coffee be like a ritual every morning and like do the pour over, do the Americano and like kind of have that, like get the day started, sit down and then read the news and then start with the emails. And that normally takes a really long time. And that's actually one of my challenges is it's so easy to kind of get down the rabbit hole when you're sitting in front of your computer because there's so much to do.
Yeah.
And then time just passes. So I also always have to go to the roasters and pick up coffee and drop it off. And then a lot of phone calls and meetings and shipping out the coffee like to the post office and to UPS every day.
Yeah, there you go. Like that's it. That's the in a nutshell. And then you're exhausted at the end of the day. Once the PO's closed and UPS and FedEx, and you can relax at all or get back on your email.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, there's some days that, you know, after I go to the post office and I like sit back in my car and I like just sit. I'm like so tired, but I'm like, okay, I got everything in, you know, like job well done.
Did it. That's it. Well, you know, you got to hit that success button. You have to hit that and celebrate your success by having a cup of coffee or doing whatever it is that you do to relax and reflect so that you can and you know this from your life as a lawyer, you have to continually improve upon the way you're doing things so that you don't end up doing, you know, it's a weird thing, but when we're first starting something, we don't know the simplest way to get from A to Z, but there really is one. Like, you know, I grew up in LA too. And so my father, he worked in downtown LA and we lived in Altadena before Altadena was a cool place to live. And so my father would do that commute every day and it was horrible then, but he would say, the thing is, you have to always learn the shortest route between point A and point Z. And so he taught me all about the back roads. So if the freeway's bogged down, then you're going to go over here and you're going to get on this road and then you're going to go down and then you go back behind the Hollywood Hills and then you go, you know what I mean? Like that. And I think that's part of what you learn as an entrepreneur is that you get better and better and better. Do you feel like that's what's been happening?
Absolutely. Well, I felt like I've gone through this like crazy rush of kind of running around without my head on. And now it's so much focused on being as efficient as possible and like learning how to be like, okay, like I can cut this and I could focus on this and hopefully hiring someone to do operations soon, which is also like a massive goal for me because that will free up a lot of my time. So
yes, but you got this support from UC Irvine. That is incredible. I mean, that is such a big deal. And that's a huge lift. Of course, then you have to train everybody and all that stuff, but that's part of the internship process. That's why they're interns. And then you eventually hire them if you can get them, right? If they love you enough and what you're doing in the world, they're so connected to it. And when you started, did you do the traditional things like coming up with what your mission statement was and your purpose and all of those things and your goals, your big, hairy, audacious goals?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like because I'd been working on it or been thinking about it for years, like it kind of kept being fine tuned. It wasn't something I just like wrote down right away. It was something that really I thought about so much. And I'm so lucky to have an amazing board of directors as well, who are just these incredible women who like are all from, you know, some are lawyers, some are graphic designers, like interpreters, really cool work that they do and all very committed to social justice, which is great. And so they're always there if I need a sounding board or if I need ideas or if I need help with anything, like they're very supportive. So that has made a huge difference as well.
Yeah, all that support. I think that level of support really it buoys you when you need it. And when you know, this is what I say to my partner, Julie. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to ask you this question once. And I'm only going to ask it once today, but is it all going to be okay? And then she knows, okay, we're going to turn on the switch. It's going to be great. This is going to be the best year ever, you know. And then she's not quite as animated as that, but you know, I think you need your pep squad to get in there and kind of help you sort things through and figure out what the next step is. And I have some great resources for you that I haven't connected you to, but I'm going to for sure. Now, so when you think of the vision for you, what's your vision for Cafecita? What do you know, best case scenario, let's do the future you, let's do a future cast and tell me what are you reeling in?
Well, so for Cafecita, I really would like, whether it's this year or later, to have the physical location and have the cafe and be able to start doing our own programs, right?
Yes.
So like job training, community development, like as well as fun community, like musical, creative events, which is really cool. I definitely want to continue growing the creative side of the business, which is another aspect of when you're like, oh, but you know, when people are thinking like, what's that thing that they want to start? And I was like, I also really wanted to be creative because as a lawyer, besides maybe creative arguments, I felt like I wasn't getting.
You never got to tap into that part of yourself. All right. So that's good. So that's part of it. Yeah. What else? Is there anything else that you see in that, you know, like, you know, 100,000 women farmers getting, you know, like.
Right. So definitely having at least like the one physical location and then continuing to grow the e-commerce and working with these platforms, which is great because it's just been I definitely don't want to lose that even despite having the physical location. So that's the ideal for Cafecita. And then for me, I cannot wait to be the person that actually is going into all the farms and meeting with all the women and being able to take on that role rather than like the day-to-day
yeah. So when you have that operation, so we got that operations person's in place, you're traveling around and you're meeting people, which is what your favorite love is, right? Travel. That was your number one thing. So we go back full circle to that. Well, that's fantastic. Now tell me what, thank you so much for going through this, but what would you say to somebody who is in a career and they want to pivot to do their own thing? What tips would you give them about it?
So, I mean, I do think thinking it out, right? I think there's like a fine balance of overthinking and then people never take that first step and they never actually do it. So you definitely don't want to get like stuck in that, but you also don't want to jump into something because it is 24 hours a day work, you know, like when you're, at least as far as like when you're starting, you have to be passionate about the work. Yes. You have to really believe in what you're doing. So, you know, make sure that it is something that you really love. And then having that support, like I don't have a co-founder, which I think would be very, very helpful. And I see these other companies that have that set up and I completely understand where they're coming from. So at least if you don't have that, like me, just having a good support system as well, people that you really trust their opinions and can always kind of talk to them and get that advice. So
I love that. I think those 3 tips are like the main tips about anything you're doing, honestly, and especially that level of support. You got to use and not abuse, but use that level of support. Use your support team and thank them often because those are the people that really have your back and they'll help you. You know, they'll raise the water level on your boat, which sometimes you really need that. And I know from talking to, you know, I interviewed in a earlier podcast, Dan's Bagels, right? And he started his bagel company like only, I don't know, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. They're sold out every single day. Wow. They have a brick and mortar in Texas. And I mean, I went there because the bagels were fantastic. But what he said was this thing that you're talking about, you know what you're getting into so that you're not walking in blindly and that you know that it's you that's working the material. It's you that's fulfilling the orders, which is what I hear you doing, you know, talking about driving to the coffee and dropping it off and then, you know, all that stuff. And that's what you do at the beginning until you have someone who can help you with the other pieces of it. You're so incredible. And I love that you're doing this because I think that no matter where you are in the world as a woman, you deserve the right to be paid at an equal level as your male counterpart or whoever is your counterpart, right? And so I am so grateful to you for like doing that, boosting up the experience and the economy for women. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice.
And thank you so much for being here with us. Oh my gosh. And so in the show notes, I'll put how you can order coffee from Cafecita because you really want to, and you want to support this and everything that you're doing, and how they can follow you on Instagram, because I'm sure you're on Instagram and we can go with you in that trip. Yes. So you're going to be posting.
Absolutely,
yeah. So we want to see that, engage with you. And so all of that will be in the show notes. I just thank you so much for being here, Natalie. It was so great to meet you.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So everybody, you know the drill. If you like this podcast, please forward it to your friends. We want everybody to know about Natalie Webb and Cafecita and order that coffee so we can raise the boat for women all around the world. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, up your creative genius. I mean it.